Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Salon Scoop podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of getting the scoop on the one and only Sean Godard. This is going to be a super fun episode. I'm really excited for this and to kind of be able to catch up with you, Sean. I actually had the pleasure of knowing Sean way back when he wasn't famous at all. He was just a regular stylist. I don't even know, Sean, if you remember, you were working on a salon in Toronto and King Street West. Do you remember the name of it?
King Street West. Yes, that was Lift Salon, I believe.
Yes, I think that's it. That's actually, I do remember. That's where I met you for the very first time when I was doing some salon tours. And anyways, it's been a joy to kind of watch you develop and grow into the industry leader that you are today over that time frame. I'd say kind of like 15 years ish. For those that don't know all of Sean's credentials, I'd be shocked if you follow the industry. You should. But I mean, he's an international Redken artist, doing hair shows, events around the world. If it's a major hair show going on, you can pretty much guarantee that Sean is one of the lead facilitators of that event. He's been a color genius throughout his career and a staple at the Redken Exchange in New York. And of course, he's got a NAHA trophy to his name, several finalist appearances, and does a whole lot of everything else in between. Sean, it's been amazing to know you and to really kind of work with you for so many years, see your journey. And I just want to thank you so much for being on our show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always good to reunite with a fellow Canadian crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sean, one thing that we like to start every single one of our episodes with is a S.O.S signature question. So I'm going to hit you off right off the bat with, if you could do any celebrity's hair that you have not done yet, who would it be and why?
I love this question. I get asked it all the time. My answer, if anyone follows me or knows me, I'm a huge Mariah Carey fan. We call ourselves lambs in that world. So I would love to do her hair. And I'm working on that connection. Tracy Cunningham, our friend, does her hair. And I keep telling her on the side, I'm like, if you ever need me to hold foils, I will be there in a second.
Amazing. Well, that would be so much fun. Well, make sure that you let us know when that happens, because if you put it out there, right, and you start manifesting it, it will happen at some point. So
until she blocks me from texting her about doing Mariah Carey's hair with her, then I've gone too far.
Well, then you just find a different angle. So when one door closes, another one opens.
Another one opens.
Yeah. Awesome. Sean, we want to give our listeners a real sense of sort of what it's like to go through the educator artist journey. But I like to always start just by asking how you got into the industry in the first place, because everyone's story is so unique. So how did you first decide that you were going to be a stylist?
So it was an interesting journey. I think the fastest way to explain it is that, like a lot of people, I didn't know what I wanted to do at first, but I knew that I was creative, and I found myself always doing friends' hair in high school, just kind of for fun. I loved going to the salon and seeing what was happening when girls would go get their hair done. I'd go back and try and do hair in the bathroom with whatever products I could find. And, the results were okay. We're teenagers, whatever. Fast forward, when it was time to figure out a career, I knew that I wasn't in the academic world per se, that it was just going to be something creative. But, at the time, being a hairstylist was very much still not, and I know still to some people it's not thought of as a career, but like at the time, it was really not something that you would consider going into unless you were like, a stay-at-home mom or you got a family. It wasn't thought of being like a booming career where you could make money. So one of my friends actually got into doing hair, went into hair school at Hair Design Center in Nova Scotia. That's where I started. And he was like, it's really fun. You should consider doing it. And so the reality was I had to get into something very fast that I could support myself in. So hair school is a shorter period of learning than a lot of other things. So I jumped into it with like, what do I got to lose? It was something that I was interested in, but let's see how, with training, how far I can come with that. So that was kind of what got me in the door. And honestly, after that, there's been no looking back.
Just been one thing after the next.
Yeah.
And when would you say that you decided that you wanted to go down the educator artist path, and what was that trigger for you?
So there was a few things that brought me to that world. One, I never would have expected that I would be here, because I was actually, believe it or not, shy, kind of soft-spoken, didn't really put myself out there in the way that I do now. So at the
Stop.
yeah,
There's no way.
I was the kid that would call out of school if I had to do a public speaking presentation. I was so scared of getting in front of people. I hated being like looked at. I know, LOL. But things have changed with training, which we'll probably get into as well. But I think the thing that got me into it was when I first left hair school and started at my first salon, I realized really quickly that education was key to my success as a stylist. And I had a lot of great opportunities with the people that I was working with and the school that I went to push me into those opportunities and realize that world even existed. So I realized early on also that education's expensive too. So the thing was, I'm like, well, if I could get involved with this company, then they're going to educate me and I'm going to be able to get opportunities by volunteering a lot of free time to shadow who turned out to be mentors, and get all of that education for free, and then ultimately be able to add that to my tool belt. But I want to share one key thing about how I did get discovered, let's say. It was with one of my sales reps in the salon, actually a full-time educator that was in my salon. She came up to me and was like, I think you'd be really great doing being an artist. And I was like, no, like there's no way, I'm never going to get up in front of people. Me? And she was like, no, we train you. Like you go through a whole process. And she explained how the Redken artist training really worked. So it was with her belief that ultimately got me my foot into the door. And yeah, I can never look back now.
Yeah, sometimes other people are going to see something in us that maybe we don't see ourselves, right? So
exactly.
It kind of sometimes takes that push, but I think what's important is that people are at least open to those possibilities. So when somebody does come and present you, with an option and an opportunity, that you try to be as open as possible to let yourself experience those, because you never know where it could lead. Right. And you're a prime example of that. One little question like that from your sales rep that kind of leads you to take one step to maybe try something for the first time, and then look at where you are today. So the paths can be abundant for anybody out there who's open to try different things. I'm curious to know, from your opinion, and having been in the educator artist world for so long now, you see this as well as I do. Why is it that so many people sort of glamorize and want to become educators and stylists, right? It's like people idolize, you when you're up on stage, and other big artists, and it's like, oh, I want to do that. Like, why do you feel that so many people want to become educators and stylists? And is it all that it's cracked up to be?
So there's a lot of roads in this conversation, but the first one that comes to mind for me is really that I think about why I saw it as being glamorous. And now I won't lie, are there times where it feels glamorous? Absolutely. Is it amazing to go somewhere and people are excited to see you and want to say hi to you? Of course. But the non-glamour side of it would be that you're literally traveling every single weekend sometimes. So you're missing out on pretty much any home life that would happen, whether that's relationships, family, birthdays, you name it. You kind of have to be available then to go do whatever you signed up to be doing. So a lot of your personal life takes a backseat. So you have to be aware of that. But when I thought about it, what was glamorous to me was really the thought of being able to travel around. At the time, I hadn't been to a lot of places. I was from the East Coast. I moved to Toronto. Canada was like kind of most of it. So I really wanted to travel and be able to get around the world. And again, me being thrifty and cost effective, I'm like, if I can get someone else to pay for this, that's better than me having to pay for it myself and be able to experience all of this. So that's where I was coming from. I was really young at the time, like I got into the artist world. I was probably like 23 23, maybe 24. So quite young compared to a lot of my peers that were doing it already. So yeah, it was just wanting to get around and travel, and that felt glamorous to me. Now, when you actually get out on the road and travel and you end up in some places that maybe aren't as glamorous, that's when you have the reality that you're like, wow, I'm alone in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere. Meanwhile,
They sent me to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan to do a course here.
that was my first big break. So I can't forget Saskatoon, to be honest. I love that we went there because my very first main stage show was in Saskatoon.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that, yeah, you never forget where you started.
For sure. Wow. That's crazy. And what was kind of maybe the key to success? Like, how did you get your first real shot to be on stage? Sort of what was that transition like?
So I think any big major brand that you work for is going to be looking for your willingness to work, obviously. The more you give to them, the more they're going to give back to you. And so the fact that as a young 20-something, I put aside, a lot of the things that you'd be doing when you're in your 20s, like figuring it out, I put all of that aside and fully focused on brand and my salon business at the time, like working behind the chair. And so I think that they realized ultimately the commitment that I was giving to them. Therefore, they gave the commitment back to me. And, we've seen several people come into it and dip their foot in the artist pool, and they do great and they have a great run. But I think sometimes the realization on the artist then is like, oh my God, I'm in too deep. I can't keep up with this to leave the life that I have at home or to leave my salon business or things like that to make it worth it. Because the catch, I will say, is that, when you're new, you're trying to build your name in the industry on a stage side. So you have to think about, in the beginning, sometimes you're not going to be making the same amount doing education as you might behind the chair if you're like a booked and busy slamming stylist. So it kind of takes time. And to be honest, that's where we lose a lot of people in the educator journey, because there's a lot more money behind the chair at first, especially if you're a booked and busy stylist. Now, again, I'll say, because I started this so young and I had just moved to Toronto, I didn't have a full-time clientele behind the chair yet. So for me, being able to work part-time behind the chair and then assist and volunteer and take the opportunities, even though it might not have been paying a lot of money, it was still able to help me get by and get me to the level that I'm at. So you do have to make a decision. Is behind the chair going to be my priority, or am I trying to get my foot out the door into other opportunities?
Nice. Okay. And so what would you say was your key to success to really kind of accelerate as quickly as you did through the artist world?
I think the big key, obviously, is like your return on investment, we call it. So it's like, if Redken, being the brand that I'm with, invest in me to put me in these opportunities, like a main stage show at Saskatoon ABA, or in someone's salon that's one of our top accounts, if I'm not performing on my end and they're not getting great feedback about my presentation or what I taught them, then I think that's really what helps you excel. And for me, the easiest thing about this, and I realized it very soon on, was as an educator, the more, and basic's not the word, the more you can simplify what people do every day behind the chair, the better you will excel. And I think there was a time when educators would go out of their way to try and do, something that was really crazy and really wild, because some of that is your own ego of you trying to say, look, I'm a creative hairstylist. This is what I can do. But the reality is, when you go out there in the salons, 9 times out of 10, people are looking for a new foil placement, how to do a balayage faster, how to save time, doing regular hair that 95% of the clientele is asking for. So when I shifted my education into understanding that it was really just about teaching people how to do what they do easier and simpler, one, it took a ton of pressure off my shoulders, because I didn't have to become a creative genius. I just had to learn how to share a message to make it simple for other people to remember and give them lots of tips and tricks. And then that really took off for me, because the salons that I was going to were saying, wow, I learned so much from him. And in my mind, I was like, I'm just teaching them the stuff that I do every day. So it really just turned into this great synergy of like realizing that you really don't have to overcomplicate things, just help people do what they're trying to do and make it easier for them.
Okay. Let's talk about that first experience, of being on stage in Saskatoon at the ABA. It was your first time. How nervous were you beforehand?
Oh, there's so many things to think about that one. But yes, I was extremely nervous.
But what did you and what did you do? What did you do to kind of like help yourself get through that, right? That nervousness, that fear, that the scared of of failure or whatever it might be. Help people through that experience, because everybody experiences that. Not just the first time. I'm sure that
Right.
it's a kind of an ongoing thing, but the first time is always the hardest.
It's very true, and I still think back to a lot of the things. Even I think taste is one thing when you go back that far. When I look at the photos from it, I'm like, wow, we really can't believe we're allowed to do that. But it goes back to, first off, we both know Terry Ritzy, and he was really the person that gave me the opportunity and said, "You're here, you're ready, go do it." And I was like, I'm kind of like losing my mind, but I was set up to win because I was put up there with two other artists that had been doing this for a while. So, I think for anyone that's getting into something your first time, the best thing you can do is use your resources of other people that have been doing it and ask questions. Because the reality is, if anyone's in the world to be an educator, they're there, they should be there to help everybody. So it shouldn't be like, oh, I don't want to help you because you might be better than me. And so that's very much what I did. I relied heavily on the girls that I was with to help me get through it. And they really helped take the edge off. The funny detail about this, just to make it a bit more lighthearted here, was that doing the show, there was a livestock show that was either had just finished or was still happening on an off-site or just over. And so there was a lot of flies flying around. And I just remember trying to do this education and my first time up there, and there was like horse flies like landing on my face and like on the model. So that was my first experience. And if you can get through flies landing on you and still try and hold a good composure, then you're good.
Was the smell a little bit off as well?
It was a little off as well. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that part.
Good fun. Well, it makes for great memories, right?
It sure does.
Yeah. I want to come back to something you touched upon in your sort of intro, how you used to be super shy and timid and scared of public speaking. So obviously, as an educator and especially a platform artist, you have to become very, very confident and comfortable on stage, presenting a message clearly, like you said, in a simple way in front of large audiences. How did you overcome that fear, and maybe that tied into sort of like how you would recommend others to sort of tackle that? Because fear of public speaking is massive. It's, most people actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually the number one fear in life, ahead of dying. So
Yeah.
how did you overcome that, and what tips do you have for others?
So two huge things for me, and I will admit, first off, it's definitely the biggest thing to overcome. And to say that I'm not nervous anymore is a lie. And we always say, if you're not nervous anymore, then you're not doing it for the right reason. So a little bit of nerves keeps you doing it for the right reason from your heart. But to not get nervous, I think the hardest thing about public speaking that we're afraid of is that, that classic dream, like you're doing a speech and like you were in your underwear or something like that. It's that feeling of people looking at you and all of those eyes staring at you. So what I find very helpful is a lot of people will choose to let's say it's a main stage and you're waiting backstage and they're going to call your name and suddenly you have to walk out on that stage, and that's when all the eyes are on you. I find a lot of people hide in that backstage moment, and in that moment when you're waiting to go out there, that's when the fear builds up, because you're standing there, you're pacing, you're doing all this stuff. So what I like to do at any event, whether it's a class or a stage, is I actually like to start the event outside with the people. I don't believe that I'm any type of person that suddenly needs to be unveiled to the world on a stage. I can go out and meet and greet with the people that chose to come to my event. One, it makes them, it takes away that like I'm on a stage, you're sitting in a chair watching me. But also it takes away the energy. If you're shaking someone's hand or giving someone a hug, all of your nerves are then like kind of bouncing around the room then at that point. And you've broken down that wall of like, there's going to be this big moment where suddenly I'm going to come out and be unveiled. You've met half of them already. So I find that's what works best for me. But I will say the moment leading up to it, once I've done all that, And then I get backstage waiting for that big moment. I do need like just a moment by myself. Sometimes if there's a team around, I'm like, guys, I just need to be here. And all I tell myself in that moment is just to be myself. The message is already in my head. If I didn't know it, I wouldn't be invited to speak there. And just reminding yourself those things. When you hear your name, you walk out, and the best way I can say it is it's literally showtime, because it's almost, you are acting in a way if you're not naturally that person. So what I mean by that is, like, when I get up there, if you consider it like you're doing a play or something like that, even if you're not naturally that animated of a person or that out there of a person, allow yourself to feel like you are, because you're on a stage, and a stage is for being grand and being bold and holding an audience. So I think when I started to think of it as putting on this act, and I don't mean that with like my person, I'm a nice person and the way I am up there is kind of the way I am, but it's an amplified version of what I would be. And so if you can think about it that way, like you're almost taking a hat off and putting it on when you get up there, that's the best advice I can give you.
Very nice. Love that. Cool. Hope everyone is taking some notes here. I want to touch upon this because I feel like you were one of the first in what I saw from my perspective as a wave of Canadian artists that started to emerge on the international scene. And what I'm curious to know what you feel sort of triggered that, and how you feel that your journey has maybe made it easier for Canadian artists specifically to have those opportunities now at the international level.
So I think it's interesting point to point out that we have to call out as well, is that this was all before the time of the influencer. Actually, a lot of this was before even social media existed. So yeah, the journey that I had, and a lot of my fellow artists that were speaking about, we were doing this on a very different route than the way it's going now. So to answer that question, it's like, it was kind of like I kind of broke through the US side of things, if you will, by opportunities that I had of assisting a lot of the US artists, specifically when we had opened our academy in Toronto. I lived there. I was available to come help out every weekend. And I was like, yeah, I'll volunteer. So by working with all of those people, when I finally got to work with like the Sam Vias, the Chris Sorbys, and the Chris Barons, I was on top of mind for them when they needed support to come in and do something like a symposium in the US. So that was kind of my first big break, was getting asked to work backstage at symposium. And like anything in this industry, it's all about connections. So myself being smart about that, once I got in the door, so to speak, then you want to meet everyone that's responsible for making decisions there, introduce yourself, make sure that you do the best you can, and hope that you get asked back. So it kind of opened the door, and I guess hopefully my good behavior and good example made them realize that we have a lot more talent up in Canada. And I think that's the key thing that was happening in this time, was that we had so much, and I not had, because I do believe still that Canadian stylists are more talented than some of the other ones. I'll just say that. We have a lot more really, really great stylists in Canada. And so it's easier to stand out, I think. I think a lot of the times Canadians think that they don't stand out, but the fact is it's easier to stand out being a really strong stylist there, to be able to get your name out there and to be able to cross over. So you're right. After I did it, there were several other artists that were able to come in and join the squad and really have a great representation of Canada on a global Redken scale.
Do you think that it's easier today with, all the digital means and, social media channels that exist? You find that makes it easier for people to get noticed, or harder because there's so much more competition?
Yeah, it's a tough one now. I think that if you are really, to do social media well, you really have to love it. And so if you love social media and you're willing to then give that your all, I think that it is easier, because you know all the tricks and how to get yourself out there. Maybe you had a following already because you love social media so much. However, if you're on the other side of things, and I'll put myself on this line, you know, I'm not no spring chicken no more. And like when I started, social media wasn't even a thing. So my friends and I that are of my age demographic are always joking about how we signed up to do hair, and now we're signing up to like do TikTok dances and like record and be videographers. So it really has added like a whole other world to it. So I think if you're good at it, it gives you a good opportunity. If you're not so good at it, it can pose some challenges. Specifically, the biggest challenge is that nowadays most brands aren't growing talent the same way that they did before, because the fortunate or unfortunate part of it is that everybody's looking at what kind of following do you have, or what is your social media content, at least even if it's not follower based, and are you active on it? And I think the reality is it's just a new currency in our business. And even if you're not a master of it, it's never too late to get into it, get someone to help you on it, to figure it out, to how you can use it to grow your business the way you want to. So if that's as an artist, my recommendation is that you need to start filming tutorials, education content. If it's to grow your salon business, obviously we know it's post that kind of stuff, like your before and afters and all that. But if you're looking to get into the artist world or teaching, you want to start focusing on what you can teach on your social media, so that when you end up meeting with a brand, they can see what you're all about and what your style is.
Yeah, because it kind of becomes your portfolio, right? Whether you're
Absolutely.
whether you're a stylist, you know, in a salon, and your target market is, you know, actual consumers to come in and have their hair done, your social media, what you're putting out there, is your portfolio of work to showcase to potential consumers. If you're on the educator artist side, you know what, you're putting out a portfolio, obviously towards other stylists, but also towards, you know, the decision makers who are potentially going to invite you to do education and to do shows, you know, because that's how you can kind of showcase what you're capable of. So, you know, if you're out there today and you're still not, you know, super active, I think what Sean said is consistency is, you know, probably the most important. You just have to start putting yourself out there. You don't have to be perfect, you know, right off the bat, and nor should you wait until you feel like you're an expert before you start. You know, that's certainly a tip that I would provide, is you just have to start, and you're going to kind of evolve and grow and become better and better by actually doing it. And it's the same as, you know, pretty much any skill that we're learning in life. You know, you have to just practice it, and you'll just keep getting better and better. Sean, I want to talk a little bit about your social media while we're on this topic, because you clearly don't just post for the sake of posting. Like, there's some strategy behind it. Can you share with our listeners, what is your sort of intention or the purpose behind your content that you're putting out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about two sides of content. So there's the feed itself, so what you're seeing on the grid. And I think one thing that comes with that, if you're hesitant about social media or maybe not as on board as others, is it's almost the same fear we talked about with public speaking. You're putting yourself out there to everybody to see. So I'll admit, even for myself, I used to get very concerned with what that feed looked like. Did everything match? Did it look pretty? And the reality is that was the way Instagram was when it was more photo-based, when it first started. Nowadays, it's not about that. It's just about getting stuff on there. Don't overthink it. And that's still something that I struggle with, being a bit of I want it to be as perfect as possible. But more recently, I've been playing around with just putting things out there that are not even necessarily new. And that's a key thing also. Social media doesn't have to be what's happening right now. You can reuse clips and content from many things that you've recorded to edit into something that is going to go out and ends up being, maybe will become viral. There's this one video that I keep posting every year or so, and it was my first thing to actually become viral. And it was you doing a finger wave with a curling iron. And every time I post it, even though it's been out there forever, it picks up again and again and again. So, and it's the most raw video. It was not overthought. There's a girl popping up behind it. The hair's a little messy. It's really, the reality is people love raw content now and not being so overproduced, which is where I used to try and do it. And then I would feel overwhelmed and not want to do it. So if you just do it in the fly, you'll be better off than not doing it at all. That's one thing to say. Now, the other thing is that, and this is a classic line, is people buy people before they buy things. We all know that line. And I think sometimes there used to be this thought that your social media, if you're a professional, that you never showed anything of your life. It was like, this is what I do, and this is how I do hair. I will tell you that those times have changed. More people are interested in me and then sometimes the hair that I do. So it's interesting to think about. So this is where stories come into play. If you want to, my advice is if you want to show personal life, do it. Because when I follow people, if I just see a page that's all a bunch of back of heads of pretty hair, I'm not that into it because I see a lot of pages with pretty hair. I'm a hairstylist. So I want to, it's kind of boring. So I want to know a little bit more about you. I want to see at least even who you are. Sometimes I scroll people's pages and I don't even see a face of who the artist is that's doing all this beautiful stuff. So definitely show yourself and use stories for that. It's a great way to be personal. And stories help so much with engagement. And I'll leave it at that. Engagement is key. You can't put stuff out there and not reply to everybody. So the engagement is what helps your numbers grow. So when people are commenting on your stuff, you got to be ready to comment back quickly. That's what algorithm is looking at. Are you engaging and being social? If you just put stuff up there and you're not engaging, well, one, people will stop commenting on your stuff and following with you, but also you're not going to reach the heights that other people are because it's based on engagement, not just posts, but also stories. And one other thing, focus on video. It's crazy to say, but like the photo is kind of dying. And I've experienced it myself on my social as well. If you're going to do a video or a reel, you're going to get the boost from it because that just seems to be what people want to see right now.
1000%. We preach this all the time on our end, being digital marketing specialists. And, we have other episodes that we do just, talking about different, digital marketing tips and strategies and whatnot. So couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Sean. Like,
perfect. I was like, did I say it right?
Totally. Video is absolutely, the most important thing right now. And the personal, people can see this. You look at all of your different posts and the ones of just, you with some friends or family on a weekend afternoon, always is the one that gets the most engagement, the most likes, the most comments. That's just the way that it is because people are on social media to be social. That's why it's called social media. And, they like to just kind of see the updates, what people are up to and that kind of human connection. That's what you actually will engage with. It's nice to see, nice education and nice photos and nice work and that you're going to see, but you might not engage with it as much. So you definitely want to put yourself out there with your content. Sean, I want to ask you a specific question about yours because I tend to notice you on top of the great education and results that you deliver, I associate you quite a bit with fashion. There's definitely a fashion component that you're putting forward in your social media. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, that's sort of becoming, or it has been, and it's a strengthening part of your kind of personal brand that you're putting out there. Am I fair in saying that?
You are 100% fair in saying that because here's what I realized was that once I started to put more of myself out there was when people would like pictures of me more than pictures of hair that I spent hours doing. So I was like, okay, well, this is easy. I like fashion. I like getting dressed up. I already have all the fun stuff the clothes. So why not make some documentation of it? So once I started doing that, I realized that was putting my engagement really high up there. And again, that's just going back to people liking a person and buying into that person. And then of course, they're going to support my education and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely people are into my vibes.
Yeah. And see, then I think, but that's what you also kind of want to think about, what's going to make you a little bit unique, right? A little bit different, because otherwise everybody's feed just looks like, picture of hair, picture of hair, picture of hair, picture of hair. So, it's nice to sort of find the thing that you are passionate about and, don't be shy to kind of share that a little bit with the world. And that becomes what makes you a little bit unique and will actually increase the attraction, to your profile, to your content as a whole. So anyhow, I think those are great insights on the sort of digital social media front. Let's just come back a little bit. We've talked a lot about Canada, but you obviously, now live in New York. You moved there several years ago. When was it that you moved to New York, and what was your main motivation for moving there?
Yeah, I moved in 2016, and by that point, I had already been working at the Redken Exchange in New York for maybe like 7 years by then. So I had been coming to New York so often for like a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, that and my life in Toronto where I was living was already on the road. So by coming to New York more and more, one, it was so close, but it was taking away more and more time of the few times I was actually in Toronto and not, all across Canada. So my point in this is that life started to happen more here for me. I started to make more friends in New York City. Obviously, the brand is based in New York City. And I just knew that it was always something that I wanted to do, from starting in Halifax, which we would consider a smaller city, and then going to Toronto. That was it was hard, but I did it and I got through and finally worked my way up. And I don't know, I guess I was just like, let's try this all over again, like one more time, and see what we do. And I think I was very nervous in the beginning because I knew that I was going to be taking a risk from leaving my job part-time behind the chair to guarantee that client income that we all know and love. And then my part-time education, I was risking that all to come into this market, having no idea if I was going to get booked. I wasn't going to be working in a salon. I knew that was a choice I was going to make, that I was going to commit myself fully to education and editorial photo shoots and things like that. So I didn't want to get tied up behind the chair again. So I was really taking a risk of, will they like me? Will these people book me down here? And I'll tell you, before I even fully lived here, I was already like booked out for that year. So that made me realize that I had made the right choice and that things were going to be going good here. And I think that if anyone is familiar, like, obviously there's a lot of differences between the US and Canada with everything. But one thing I will say is, if you come to this country with the willingness to work hard, you can run circles and laps around people. So, I'm just like, if the opportunity is there, I'm going to come and grab it. Watch out, Team Canada.
Go. Sean, we're going to start sort of wrapping up here. I just have a couple of questions left. What's one thing that you're maybe most proud of in your career so far?
Oh, I mean, there's two sides to that for me. I know you asked for one, but I can never just pinpoint it. One thing would be winning
question not clear enough?
I know. Okay, one thing, winning NAHA this last year was something that I worked really hard for. I had won one previously with a team, which felt great, but I wanted to win one on my own. So getting that last year was definitely the biggest thing.
Nice, that's fantastic. What about some future professional goals? I mean, you've come so far, from your humble beginnings in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and you're at a place that you never even sort of thought about. So it might not be possible to really see where you could be in another, 15 years down the road. But what are some maybe short to medium term goals for you?
Yeah, short-term goal, I'm really trying to work on more celebrity clientele. I think it's fun. It's something that I like to do. I'm obviously obsessed with pop culture. So the last one that I had recently was Lindsay Lohan, which was amazing. And I seem to have gotten myself in a Reds world. So I can't say who it is, but working out something with someone that's extremely famous, also a redhead, that I'm hoping comes through as well. So getting some more celebrities in the near future, what I'm trying to work on. If we talk about long-term down the road, that's where I really am still doing some mapping and planning on how to really, it's kind of at the point to be strategic with what I'm doing and how I'm utilizing my time out there. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. But this year, it's definitely just getting back into the world. I think, we're finally open up again fully, and wanting to be able to get out there and do more international. So I have a few key international countries that I'm going to this year that I'm really excited for as well.
Very cool. All right, we are going to wrap up today's show with one more S.O.S signature question for you, Sean. What advice would you give your younger self if you were starting all over again in the industry? And therefore, obviously, kind of, advice that you'd give to younger stylists today out there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be to not doubt yourself. And then the reminder of the classic line, which is like, fake it till you make it. Both of those things come in very heavy hand in hand to me, because I think as a younger stylist, I doubted myself a lot. Especially when it came to my age. Being younger made me feel like I wasn't going to be as good as maybe somebody that was older or someone had that been doing it longer. And so I found very quickly that if you just have the confidence and fake it till you make it, you're going to get there eventually. It's just all about how you carry yourself and how your confidence guides you through it.
Love that. Great message, and a great way to wrap up this conversation today. Thank you so much for being here, Sean, and giving us the scoop on your amazing experiences and journey so far. If people want to connect with you on social, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Sean Godard, 1D, Godard.
Easy as pie. And as a listener, if you've enjoyed this episode, we encourage you, feel free to reach out to Sean, but also, share this with at least one other industry professional that you feel could benefit from it. Maybe somebody who's, in the educator artist path in the early stages, or someone who's considering it. Let them listen to, some great advice and insights of someone who's, gone down the path. I think Sean has shared some really, really wonderful advice and just kind of key information to consider, to make sure that, and to see if this is really the right path for you or not. So thank you again, Sean, for being here with us. Really appreciate that, and look forward to seeing you as you continue your incredible career. It's great to follow along.
Thank you so much. It was good to see you and catch up.